Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all awake after that. It's been super fun to create videos like that. And that song has been stuck in my head like a vicious earworm all night. So I hope you're feeling the joy of a beautiful new morning, no matter where you're watching from. We've got sunshine here in Minnesota, and we're hoping for a beautiful day. Let us know how you are, and where you're from, and all those things. So may God bless our time together this morning. May it inspire you in new ways, and thank you for being here. May it be so. May it be so. I want to talk with you a little bit about our continuing theme on music and harmony and unity. And one of the things that comes up over and over, in fact, I asked my daughter the other day, so if you were me, what would you talk about next? And she said, well, what have you not dug into yet? And I said, rhythm. And rhythm makes complete sense, because as soon as I said it, I knew that's what we needed to talk about pretty quick here. Rhythm is so important in what we're doing in life. We are such creatures of habit and patterns and rhythms. It matters so much to us. Our earth has rhythm, with the turning. Obviously, we see the sun coming up now. The earth has rhythm. The seasons have rhythm to them, the days and the nights. Our bodies have rhythm. Our heartbeats, our vascular tissue, our brain responses, our breath has rhythm to it also. We have to eat meals regularly. I mean, we all get it. We have rhythm in our bodies and in our lives. And in order for us to be healthy, we need healthy patterns of life too. I personally am super resistant to patterns and rhythms in life, and I realize that costs me a lot. But we need them. We need patterns and routines, if you will, that keep us healthy and keep us alive. You got to go to bed. And you got to get up, and you have to eat healthy food, and you have to take care of yourself. I know you probably agree with me on this. Don't be afraid to comment this morning. I'd love to hear from you all morning. So share your thoughts and your ideas all day today. In these patterns and in these moments of rhythms, when our rhythm gets off, it's hard for us, even within what we do develop. So, for example, I used to have someone in my life who had an irregular heartbeat, and their irregular heartbeat wasn't medically dangerous to them at that time at all. Maybe it is now, I don't really know. But their regular heartbeat produced feelings of anxiety or oddness about it. And I remember at the time we did some research about that. And it was natural that if your heart doesn't beat regularly, you feel anxiety. We long for regular rhythm. And we need this. We develop patterns in our days. Some people need it more than others. In our weeks, our months, and our years. And we create structure around those patterns. And I don't think this is bad. I think God made us to be people of rhythm. Otherwise, our heart wouldn't beat like they do, and our breath wouldn't happen like it does. It's just like that. We develop structures and traditions and even beliefs, and we form values around our patterns and our rhythms. I'm sure you have heard somebody say, I'm sure you've said it, it's a common phrase, we are creatures of habit. Yep, we are we not? Well, I'm thankful for one that you are here this morning, and I hope that morning TouchPoint and evening TouchPoint and some form of worship and connection has become a good habit for you during this difficult season, and I hope it sticks. I hope it sticks long after. It's great to see all of you here on 3 different platforms this morning: Facebook church profile, Facebook my page, and also on YouTube. We're hoping to get a better connection with our website in the future. We tried something new today and it didn't work out. So if you're watching this later and you tried to connect on the website, I do apologize for whatever went wrong. We'll get it right. I see your comment already. Yes, COVID did mess up your home's rhythm, and it messed up all of our home's rhythms, for the most part. We're going to talk about that today. Yes, Todd, I see you and I hear you. Yep. Our creatures of habit behavior is trouble for us sometimes, especially in seasons like this when we can't do the things that we're used to doing in the same way. Think about this though for a minute. We do get really stuck in our habits and our patterns and our behaviors, not to mention in our long-term beliefs and ideas, maybe even our priorities and values in these things. There's a story in the Bible that I talked about this last Sunday morning. If you want to catch it, you can catch it on our Facebook pages or our YouTube page, Coon Rapids, UMC, Minnesota. I talk about the story of where Nicodemus comes to meet with Jesus during the cover of night. And it's recorded in John chapter 3. Nicodemus was a super educated Pharisee. He had lots of patterns of life. And his position depended on his knowledge, but also his birthright and his upbringing, all these things. But his position depended upon his knowledge and his smarts and his all these things. And he comes to Jesus asking about the kingdom of God. So you got to give him credit for that. He was willing to break out of his habits and patterns to talk to a guy who he thought maybe was amazing. Even refers to him as a rabbi, which was a stretch, right? And Jesus is so clear with Nicodemus. He says, basically, the way I interpret it, Nicodemus, you have to be born again. You have to start over. You have to learn to see things without all of this construct, without all the expectations, without all the patterns that have been set before you, without the obligations, without the social structures. You got to learn to see things in a new way, and then you can enter the kingdom of God right now. And I think that's interesting because this season has disrupted so many things. It does give us the opportunities to see things in new ways. And I don't want to be trite about it. This season has been extremely hard. Less so for me than for many, many people, but I'm aware of I'm aware that it's less for me than many people. So my heart goes out to you if this season has just been absolutely devastating, and praying for you. You need to know that. Please reach out to me and share. I'd love to learn more about what you're going through. It's difficult. But with all these patterns and systems and rhythms disrupted on a personal level and on a cultural level, it does give us a chance to learn and grow. We're learning more about why we have been doing the things we do. Whole systems have the opportunity to be born again, if you will. Everything from how we eat out at restaurants to how we honor and celebrate the end of life. Everything. This even includes the role of church. Look, you're gathering in online community this morning, and this is growing in some cases. It's a struggle for a lot of people, but you're coming. And some of you have begun to invite friends, which is outstanding because this is the easiest time to invite someone into online community of faith. We can be all kinds of things. All of these things, the patterns by which we have done things in the past, have the opportunity for re-examination right now. And I'm wondering about you personally. I've certainly been wondering about myself. Well, many of you have been wondering about me for a while if you know me. But I'm wondering, in what ways is God asking you to examine your patterns, your rhythms, the rhythms of your life now? We all know that some of the rhythms of our lives have been super helpful and good, but there may be some that need some work, need some adjustment. And if we're going to learn to live in unity and harmony, then we should understand our motivations before we try to join the band, so that we can all learn to march maybe to a similar drummer, maybe the same drummer. We know that in the Bible, Nicodemus was motivated to seek out Jesus. And Jesus points out that Nicodemus was motivated by a rhythm based on position and knowledge to a fault. Although knowledge is good. Maybe even perhaps Nicodemus was motivated by a need to be important too. What rhythms motivate you? What drum beats? To what drum beats are you marching? What moves your steps? Some rhythms of life may be driven by expectations. Maybe they're good expectations that you place on yourself. Maybe they're things like, I expect myself to be healthy. Or maybe they're bad. Maybe they're expectations, maybe bad's the wrong word, unhealthy. Maybe they're expectations from childhood that you're still trying to meet in some ways. Maybe from other people. Maybe some rhythms in your life are produced out of reactions. So say, this happened in my childhood when I was young, so I am determined to do the absolute opposite in my future. Sometimes that works out great. Maybe other times it produces an unhealthy thing in another direction. If I'm speaking to you, you know what I'm talking about. And actually, I've done both of those things already in my life at different times. Maybe some rhythms that have driven you have been generated from fear. I can remember a time very specific, it's super vivid in my life when I decided I was no longer going to make so many decisions based on fear. That anxiety was not going to rule my life and my calendar anymore. It was a turning point in my life. I still have to fight it sometimes. But I remember making that decision that the rhythm of anxiety was not going to drive me. Some rhythms may even generate from anger built up, frustration, fear. Some that's legitimate. Maybe your rhythm is driven sometimes by obligation to some system you somehow got attached to. Sometimes it's not easy to admit that you might need to change your mind. Frankly, any rhythm that is forced or obligatory gets exhausting. Exhausting. We march to those drum beats because, well, we have to sometimes. And sometimes we just don't know how to get out of them. And we are creatures of habit, right? Change is hard. And change is even more difficult when we can't see the need for it. In Matthew 11, 25 through 30 or so, Jesus is talking with a group of religious leaders, and he's frustrated with them because they're just talking on and on and on about the obligatory temple practices, the way they took God's law and boiled it down to all kinds of rules. And the rules had just gotten out of hand. The rules became rhythmic obligation that no one could meet. No one could adhere to except for the people who had means or wealth or all the time in the world to do it, right? The religious obligation of the temple rather than the love of God. Yeah, I see your comments. Very much a creature of habit. Yep, I understand. The Message paraphrases it beautifully. It says, Jesus broke into prayer, and this is the conversation that he's having. It says, thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth. You've concealed your ways from sophisticates and know-it-alls. Now, that's pretty harsh, but he's talking about the people who just told him all the things he was basically doing wrong. This is Jesus here. But spelled them out clearly to ordinary people. Yes, that's the way you like to work. Jesus resumed talking to the people he was with at that point, but tenderly. And he says, the Father has given me all these things to do and say. This is a unique Father-Son operation coming out of Father-Son intimacies and knowledge. No one knows the Son the way the Father does, nor the Father the way the Son does, but I'm not keeping it to myself. I'm ready to go over it line by line with anyone who will listen. I love that. I think of musical line by line. I think of learning a new rhythm, a new pattern, line by line, and then Jesus says the most beautiful things you might recognize. Are you tired? Are you worn out, burned out on religion? In this case, but I would ask you, are you burned out on the rhythms of things that aren't healthy for you? And Jesus continues, come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Jesus says, I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Some of you might recognize it in a more traditional translation like this. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The rhythms of grace, of the grace of God, the rhythms of Jesus, they're not forced. They're invited. They're new life. They're hopeful. So I'm wondering this morning, what forced rhythms do you get stuck in? Are they rhythms of rules or tradition? Maybe your own expectation or expectation of somewhere. Maybe the rhythm of achievement or accomplishment or anxiety. Man, that's exhausting. The rhythm of anxiety is exhausting. Or fear. Maybe you've been caught in a rhythm of forced religious obligation. And I want to say something about that this morning. If you've been caught in a rhythm of forced religious obligation, I'm not judging here. I'm just saying this has to be a very hard season for you, because right now you can't really go to church really in the same way, right? Not really. So there's this building anxiety sometimes of people saying, I have to do that. It's just forced religious obligation. This is sometimes why I even say, although people don't really like it when I say this, I want to explain it a little bit, that I'm not religious. I think of religion as a set of behaviors and patterns that you just do repeatedly just because you do them. I mean, I am a little bit religious about cooking, although creative. But I'm not really religious about my faith. Not in that obligatory just because way. God's rhythm of grace is not a forced, demanded system. It's not a system of obligatory behaviors. God's rhythm of grace is by open invitation. It's a drumbeat based on love. And the rhythm of God's grace produces all kinds of things. See, we think the rhythm of God's grace produces laziness by still waters. You know, he leads me beside still waters and I lay down and I rest and that's it. No, God's grace produces rhythm and movement because God is a God of movement. God moves. God's grace produces joy and peace and patience and kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. Some of you recognize those things from Galatians as the fruits of the Spirit. But don't miss this. God's rhythm of grace also drives us to faithfulness, persistence, determination, and sacrifice. God's rhythm of grace, the unforced rhythm of grace, is based on love. It's an invitation to march to the drumbeat of love. It's a new way to do it. We're going to try something new this morning. I hope it works. We're shifting over to a chat because you're coming from different areas. You can't always see each other's words. And so this morning we're going to try this and see how long the delay is, because I know we do have a delay this morning. I don't know why, but that's live for you. We have a delay today. And so I want to see if you will share with each other how God's rhythm pattern is speaking to you. Because there may be a circumstance in your life that you know you're going to encounter even today. Like I know God's rhythm pattern is calling me to persistence. I have no question about it. It's hard. This is hard right now. God's pattern is calling me to hope. I know that. I'm wondering, what rhythm is God's pattern speaking into you today? And especially if that rhythm pattern goes against some pattern that normally would come natural to you. So for me, persistence is in contrast to the natural rhythm that I fight of fear and anxiety, fear of failure. That natural pattern of fear is met by persistence and hope. So I'm wondering if you would be willing to share. I'm going to share one. Let's see how fast it goes. I wonder if you will share with each other what words God's rhythm of grace is inspiring in you. Maybe you know of some specific thing, some specific relationship or activity or conflict that you're in right now that God's grace is inspiring you in a different way. Maybe you know of something that God is speaking into you and to you. I'm wondering if you will share those words with each other this morning. See, it's interesting because when you log on to my personal page, those of you on my personal page can see each other, but you can't see the people on the church page. We're starting to see some. Change is strange, but is needed sometimes for better things. Yes, it is. What drumbeat are you beginning to hear that is new, that God's grace inspires? I don't know if this makes sense to you, and I hope it does. I hope this has meaning for you. Maybe all day today, you'll be thinking, God, what are you inspiring today? Maybe there'll be an encounter that you have today, and you'll say, in the past, I would have reacted like this, but now I'm choosing this. This happened. I had a conversation with somebody who has been listening and learning and growing, and they said that they saw a conflictual reaction on like a neighborhood community conversation group, and they decided to enter the conversation as a curious listener rather than a fighter. They chose to say, tell me more about why you feel that way. So the drumbeat of grace in them produced curiosity and listening rather than combative argument. And in that, they were able to learn and maybe even bring the conversation to a better place. God's drumbeat, changing rhythm. Here we see God is calling me away from anxiety to be filled with peace and love during this weird time. Yeah. Amen. Persistence over anxiety. Yes, definitely. I'm wondering if you will see that. God's rhythm of grace is different than a rhythm of obligation or expectation or demand. To be more in tune to God's wishes for me by taking long meditative walks with your dog. Yay! I know your dog. Your dog is probably very happy that you have come to that realization. Yes. Listening to the rhythms of God's grace and learning when you get off track, distracted by a different drum beat, and say, wait a minute, I know that beat. That drum beat's not helpful to me nor anybody else. A new normal, very hard to accept this new way to live life. Yes, it very much is. This is hard. And I think that's why we need to reach out for God's grace, why we really, really, really need God's guidance and direction. Forced isolation. Slow down anxious thinking and seek God. Slowed my rhythms down. Yay. Yay. Oh, that's a super interesting way to think about it. Dave, that's very interesting. And all of you, actually, that busyness rhythm. Yeah. It's very interesting how when you slow down, you go, oh. I think in slowing down, I've realized that I have not been eating very healthy for quite a long time. It's good to eat healthy again. It's good to take time to pray. I mean, that sounds funny. I mean, I think I used to do most of my praying in the car. Yeah. Think about this today. Think about how God's rhythm of grace is reaching you and reaching to you. And I'm going to pray for you all day that you will come to Jesus, that you will ask God to make that drumbeat of grace clear, that you will live in God's love and mercy, and that you'll know when it's time to change your steps and your patterns. I see you, Todd. I love this about you. Note the comment, I also no longer watch the news. Might be a good idea sometimes. Keep sharing your thoughts and ideas, but I got to log off. I've kept you 30 minutes this morning. Thank you so much for sharing your words. Come back tonight. Think about it all day. Come back at 7 o'clock tonight. If you think of stuff, you want to share it this evening, share it tonight. Praying God's richest blessings on you, that the drum beat, the rhythm of God's unforced, beautiful, invitational grace becomes just a part of your very heartbeat. What moves you and drives you, a part of your very breath. Because then you know what, friends? We're on the same page. We're on the same page. Many blessings to you through this day. May God's grace be with you. So have a little fun for a few minutes, and I hope I see you tonight. May it be so.